Well, good evening. Welcome to New Tracks Meetup. Thanks so much for coming. Really do appreciate it. Hope you'll come back and join us soon. And tell your friends about us. Before we start, I think Ed has some information he'd like to pass on about help he needs. So Ed?
Yes, thank you very much, Jim. Well, the thing is that this is a operation is getting a little bit too large for just the people that we have currently working on it, and want to have more and more people. So if you believe that you have the skills, and the willingness to help out, just contact us through our new tracks modeling gmail.com. And if you want to go a deep dive like I have, or if you want to just help out with the small little details that we have, then we can figure out where we can fit you in. And that's all I have. Thank you very much, Jim.
Mm-hmm. And let me just say a few more words about that. You really don't have to commit to 2 nights a week or anything like that. Any amount of help that you could give Ed, we would appreciate, because it is a real job for Ed to produce the shows and take care of the technical details of our shows. And we want to make it as pleasant for everybody as we can. We don't want to detract from the presentations in any way. And if the production doesn't go well, that's a real possibility. And that's what we just don't want to have happen. So if you can help us along, we would appreciate it. Now, with that said, if you have not gone to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and registered, we encourage you to do so. It's an easy thing to register. You get notices of all of the meetings that we're going to have and who's going to be on them, so that you don't miss any of them. And we encourage you to please go to newtracksmodeling.com and register. Our upcoming train show is March 20 and 21. We've got three great sponsors. The Great Scale Model Train Show in Timonian, Maryland is one of our sponsors, as is Joe Fugate's MRH Media LLC and Soundtracks. And we really do appreciate their help and support. Now I'd like to go to Chris Corse, who is our moderator for our My Bill. It's going to be Saturday, February the 27th. So, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. We've talked about it before, and as usual, if you're interested in sharing something that you've either worked on, something you're proud of, something maybe you found somewhere and just thought, hey, this is pretty cool, and want to share it, please drop me a message in either the chat, or I'll give you my email address here at and we can talk about it. Mainly the idea is to use these objects as a catalyst to get people talking. I know a few weeks ago, or last time we did this, I think TC brought up a kit that he worked on or had that was he was looking to build, and he had some questions on it, and he was able to get some feedback as to where to go with it. What I think he had some color questions and things like that. And people were very helpful and able to provide him with that information. So even if you're not really looking for any help, we'd love to see what you're working on, or what you built, or what you found somewhere, and maybe a garage sale. Hey, this is, I found this $5,000 locomotive in a garage sale for $5. And if you just want to brag, that's cool too. I don't care. So anyway, I put my email address up there, or you can drop me a message in the chat, and we'll sequence you in so we can make sure that you get a spot for next week, or the 27th rather.
or whatever. Thanks so much, Chris. We had a presentation that we made to the Association of Professional Model Makers this afternoon at 1:00. Thought it went very well. And I'll be posting the recording of the video on my Facebook page, Jim Kello MMR, and also on the New Tracks Modeling website. And if you get a chance, I encourage you to see the video. I think you'll find it interesting. I think there's no question that the association is interested in working with us, and working with model railroaders. And they encouraged your participation. They have a free membership that entitles you to learn about the association and participate with questions. And I would encourage you to at least take a look at the association and see if it's for you. Their members certainly are knowledgeable. They have a tremendous amount of model building capability. And their companies are using the state-of-the-art stuff on their model building. So there's a chance that we can learn a lot from them. And certainly there's an opportunity for younger model railroaders maybe to get employment with them. So I think it might be a win-win for the hobby. And that's why I'm promoting it as much as I am. Paul Thompson can't be with us tonight because his furnace went out. And it's too cold for him to participate with us without heat. So he says it's going to take him maybe a week to get the new heater installed and the house cleaned up again. So he'll be gone for a couple of shows, and then he'll return with his quick tips. And Paul, we wish you the best of luck and hope you stay warm. Now I'd like to come back to Chris for a minute and have Chris and Greg talk about what we're now calling the new series that they're going to participate in. And it's called Build Along. And they were instrumental in coming up with that name. I think it was Greg that proposed it. Chris said he liked it and I loved it. So that's what we're going to call it. It's Build Along with Chris and Greg. And so guys, if you'd like to talk about it briefly so that we'll know where to get the kit particularly and what people ought to get ready for. Because the first actual segment of this starts March the 3rd at our show. So Chris, Greg, I'll turn it back over to you for a minute.
All right. Well, thanks very much. I do have a little bit of a slideshow, but I admit it's outdated because we just decided to change the name. I think it was yesterday. So I will go ahead and share that. So we'll go over the slides that I have. Like I said, the slides are a little outdated because we changed the name. But anyway, the things that remain the same is we have the Conowingo Models Gray Street house, the company house version that was actually inspired by Greg himself with a build that he did a while back. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to take you step by step through the process. And the point of what we're trying to do here is get everybody involved in this. It's not just Greg or me or whoever building these kits. The point is to get somebody that maybe hasn't built a kit in a while, or maybe just, hey, this sounds like a cool idea. Let's do that. So the point is what we're going to do is we have individual segments set up, and I'll bring that up here in a second. Yeah, these are some of the topics we're going to go over. There's actually three topics we're going to bring up. We're going to start out by going over some glues and some tools that you might need. We're also talking about the possibility of adding Jeff Bunz into the mix to give us some lighting ideas and try to steer us in that direction a little bit. We're also going to talk a little bit about planning, because you don't just throw a building together like this. You have to have a plan. You got to have an idea what you want to do with it. And we'll go over that. But we're also going to we're going to start out, or actually after that, Greg's mainly going to take over, talk about bracing the walls, building the base, and then the next week we'll talk on painting the items that need to be painted. And then comes the installation of the doors, windows, etc., and then putting it all together and putting the roof in there as well. And hopefully Jeff can throw some things in there as well about lighting it during the building process. So if anybody, we do have both the HO and O scale version, although I must admit the O scale version is of the older version of the kit, and it does not have the the foundation, the front porch or the back step, but it does still have the tar paper roofing. It's got a majority of the kit, the HO kit in it. So even if you're an O scaler, you can still participate. So again, the build begins March 3rd, and go to conowingomodels.com to order it. In fact, those O scale guys that were waiting on their kits, parts came in. It's a miracle. They made it here in a day. I can't believe it. And so hopefully, if the postal gods are in our favor tomorrow, these things will go out in the mail tomorrow afternoon. So anyway, Greg, was there anything you wanted to throw in there?
Oh, I guess all I want to say is, as we go along on this journey, Chris is going to be mostly the spokesperson. I will be showing what I've done, but I'm not the orator that Chris is. And Jeff will be coming in. We're still planning this, but hopefully with each segment where I show what I've done for the construction and some techniques of making it look weathered and worn and stuff, we can have Jeff come in and augment that with what you would do at this stage if you were planning to do lighting inside the building. And we'll just take it through the 5 Wednesdays we have in March. And for those that want to build the kit along with us, we'll show you what we've done. And then you have a whole week to play around with it and come back the next week and we'll see where we're at. Oh,
and don't forget to ask questions.
Yes.
That's a huge part of it. So if let's say you get into it and you build the foundation and you go, this doesn't quite look right, bring it the next week. We'll share it, take a look at it and figure it out from there. Because part of this too is I'm always trying to figure out ways to improve kits and make them better and easier to put together. So you get a more professional image or a professional result with less work. So anyway, you have anything more to add, Greg, or shall we turn it back?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. I'll turn it back to Jim then. Thank you very much.
Well, before you all run away, I got a question for you. Let's say I'm an O scaler. So I bought the O scale kit, but I want to build it like the HO model shows.
I can help an O scaler with that because this kit is based on one that I originally built from his original Gray Street house, which didn't have a porch or any of the augmentation that a company house would have. And if someone was interested in that, I could share the photos I did when I had to scratch build the porch and the back porch and those pieces. So any modeler should be able to come up with what I did. It's nothing tricky, really.
Maybe when you're doing your overview of materials and so forth, you might consider including that kind of information for people like me who are O-scalers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you both so much. I really do appreciate this. You're kind of guinea pigs in this program, but I think it's going to be successful. I'm really pleased the way I hear about it from other modelers. So thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah, I think this is sorry. Go ahead. I think this is actually a pretty breakthrough idea you had. I think that's really, like I said, I think it's pretty forward thinking. You know, if we can build this kit as a group and everybody builds their own, hopefully we'll come out with different results that all look pretty good. And this will be great.
I think so. And I think if we could do a special My Build on it, Chris, after everybody has finished it, maybe sometime in April, we'll try to have a special segment of the My Build show and people can bring their models and let's take a look at the difference in how people constructed your kit. Now, I also want to mention that Bob Fuqua is going to be doing one with Blair Line models starting April the 17th. Now, next Saturday, Bob is going to do a little bit like Greg did tonight and Chris did tonight about his build with the Blair Line model. But Bob is also going to he's going to talk about the tools that are involved in building the kit and what he would think that a modeler needs to have on hand if he wants to build the Blair Line kit. So I think you'll be interested in what Bob has to say this coming Saturday on that. And then we have Gaylor Gill and Bar Mills kit. And then we've got Clark Cooning with Downtown Deco coming up. So we have 4 lined up so far. I haven't tried to get anybody else involved or ask anybody else to do anything like this. But if any modeler is interested in doing this, please let me know. I like I say, Chris and Greg were kind of the guinea pigs in this when we first thought about it and started talking to them. And I approached Greg and he talked to Chris, and then we've been emailing back and forth. That's how we came up with the name for the whole program. And it's kind of being put together on the fly right now, but I think it's going to be successful. And I really think that I think a lot of modelers are going to benefit from it. So if you're interested in participating in the program by doing one of the builds of a kit, doing a kit bash, whatever, doing a scratch build, whatever your interest is in this kind of program that we can share with other modelers, then by all means, let me know. Because like I say, right now I've got the 4 lined up, but I haven't asked anybody else, and I haven't proceeded doing anything else right now until I see how these are going to turn out and the reaction that we get, including the reaction by other modelers who want to be participating in this kind of an activity. So with that said, I'd like to turn now to Bill Neal, who is MMR number 480. And Bill is going to talk about a great track plan tonight. So Bill, I'll turn this over to you, sir.
All right, thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. I'm going to go over a track plan that was published a couple of years ago in Model Railroad Planning. It's a very intriguing track plan. I'd like to take a couple minutes to explain it. I'm going to be talking for a bit here, and let me make sure I can share the right part of my screen here. Let's see. Share this. Hopefully you guys can see a picture of a locomotive going through. Yep, there we go. So the story here is, what would I do if I had to move? I got to thinking about this, and the more I thought about it, the more restless I became and thought, well, what would I do? You know, I've got a very nice, relatively large basement filling layout. And if I had to do it all over again, I don't think I'd build that big. I'd have to do something smaller. And I think I'd do something entirely different. And let me show you what I'd probably get after. A while back, Peter Lero made a painting. Now, this is Peter Lero's painting of a little A5 class 040 switching Delaware Avenue. And it intrigued me. I like track work in the street. I always thought that was very interesting. And this painting was my inspiration for this layout design. So I'll talk a little bit about Delaware Avenue. The real branch was owned by the city of Philadelphia, and they had trackage rights on for 3 railroads: the Reading, the B&O, and the Pennsylvania. They all ran through the streets of Philadelphia, banging these little engines around and pushing 40-foot cars into very tight spots. Now, part of it did run underneath the viaduct, but the viaduct was actually for light rail commuter service, but I converted that to Class 1 railroad. Now, of course, trackage rights have passed on to the Norfolk Southern and the CSX, who do still switch some of these customers. But let me give you some pictures of what this thing looked like. Here's the viaduct. You can see it's a 3rd rail operation, but down below you can see the Pennsylvania, or actually I should say the Delaware Avenue branch tracks. Now, of course, there was lots of examples of Class 1 railroads that not only went over the top of the streets, but also ran down through the streets. I like this painting. I particularly like that crazy looking refrigerator car with the doors hanging open while it's being moved. I thought that was very interesting. You have lots of track work in the streets. Things get maneuvered all over the place in this area. They share a lot of pavement with the cars. You can see that most of Delaware Avenue was actually double track. It seems odd, but you have all these neat instances where the track branches off from the far track, crosses over the near track, and goes into buildings. They did this to make as wide a radius as possible going into that building. Now, of course, some of this would require some skills that like building track and that sort of thing, which I happen to have. And this layout was designed for me. So I think you got to keep that in mind. But I thought this kind of stuff was very interesting. There are a lot of neat little compact industries in the area. You can see here where these boxcars are being unloaded with boards going across between the cars. I always thought that was kind of a cool concept. This guy is throwing a switch, a single point switch. If you look carefully in the flangeway, you can see there's a chunk of rail down here. That's what's holding the point over. He will no doubt take this pry bar, pop out that chunk of rail, push the point over by hand, and throw the chunk of rail back down in that flangeway. I think that was pretty cool looking. I thought, I was kind of intrigued by that. I couldn't do that in a model sense, but I thought that was very interesting from a prototype perspective. Of course, there are lots of little pocket yards where cars were held off spot, waiting for the shipper or receiver to have room on his spurs for the cars, or to sort down stuff that the industrial switchers pulled. There's a little pocket yard here. And of course, some of these areas of Delaware Avenue were quite complicated. If you look here, there's 1, 2, 3, and I think there's a 4th track running down through here. These are all running tracks. How often do you see a 4-track main line going down the middle of a street? I thought that was pretty interesting. It's not really a main line, but it's all switching leads. It's a setup so multiple switchers can use the same area. This kind of stuff just fascinates me. Of course, there's a few derailments here and there. This is a great looking derailment that happened with this nice Milwaukee Road car. You can actually see the lumber door very well in this picture. It's a neat little shot. I don't know what they were trying to do. They missed the curve here. Now, this is where the Delaware Avenue branch started out, and you can see it kind of cutting across here. But there's all this interesting track work around, and a lot of stuff that just makes me my mouth water in terms of, boy, I bet I could build something interesting here. Lots of little freight houses and public delivery tracks. Sometimes those are called team tracks, but the Pennsy oftentimes use the term public delivery. Now, this is Pittsburgh. This is not Delaware Avenue, but I still think this is a great shot. If you look down through here, you can see that these spurs are not all that long. I mean, there's 4 cars. They take up most of that spur. So this is maybe, 3 feet in HO scale, or 1.5 to 2 foot in N scale. So it's pretty reasonable. This is another great little pocket yard. These are all team tracks, public delivery tracks. If you look carefully, this is an interesting photograph, besides the old vehicles and stuff. Right here, there's a tank car with the lid open and it's steaming. And I will bet you that there's asphalt in there to repave this crossover, this light rail crossover. I thought that was a very interesting shot. And you see there's also a high value house here. I'm not sure what they call that, but that's where if you had a car with a relatively valuable content, you would push that into there and lock that up. So that was kind of an interesting area. This is Tie Street Yard, also in Pittsburgh. But I just love this great shot. Look at the covered platform right here and the overhead crane. All kinds of interesting things can be done here. So my goals, I wanted to loosely adapt this Delaware Avenue prototype, and I decided I would build it portable. The idea of taking this to a train show and be able to have guest operators use it, I thought that would be kind of fun to do. I wanted it to be easy to store it. In fact, I may actually build this thing for myself eventually, but I better find a place to put it because my wife would not tolerate much more stuff laying around. So I've got to find a neat place to put it. And when I designed this, I thought a lot of the issue with switching layouts is they're all built one level. And I thought there could be there could be a lot of opportunity if you use some vertical space as well as a horizontal space to make something interesting. And also, being a track builder myself and a relatively good carpenter, I wanted to make it kind of fun and challenging to build. So I thought I'd take a shot at this thing. And one of the portable layouts that I'm really intrigued with is this North Carolina Sipping and Switching Society. If you haven't seen their modules and their layout, it's fascinating. This is their worst track work area in the whole thing. They call this Frog City. I don't know quite why, but it's kind of interesting. This is all code 55 rail. And when they build these modules to butt joined. There is no piece of track that bridges the gap. And I thought that's a great way to do it. Here's how they build them. They're very lightweight in construction. They're all 1/4 inch plywood and a lot of cutouts here. Very well made. It's glued and I don't think it's nailed together, although there's a hammer sitting here. I don't know how many nails they'd use. But these are very lightweight modules, and they join together with pipe fittings. They have pipes that stick out for the male part and the holes for them to slide into on the female part. And this makes it so well aligned that no bridge track is needed. And I thought that was pretty cool. I think I'd try to do something like this. So what did I decide to work with? Well, I thought I could probably get everything done in 3 modules, A, B, and C. You'll note that these are about 2 foot wide and 6 foot long. Now there is a little bump out on module B here, about 1 foot high with a little triangle on it. And that's to get the curve around the corner. Building this, I came up with this design. Now I'm going to show you the design, and then I'm going to explain it piece by piece. So bear with me on this, because this son of a gun is kind of complicated. You can see that it's got quite a lot of detail in here, and it's going to be hard to understand if I just throw this at you and leave it alone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece by piece. We're going to talk about just the upper level. You'll note here there's a staging area called Madison Avenue. Now, when I was growing up, I lived on Madison Avenue. That was my address. So I grabbed that name as just a gopher name. And the other end of this thing is Monroe Yard, because I thought, well, if I'm working with dead presidents, I might as well get both the M guys. So I have the M and M route here. Madison Avenue to Monroe Yard. Madison Avenue is staging. You can see there's a blue line around it. I got to move my my picture of you guys. There we go. Get that out of the road. There's a blue line around. That would be like a backdrop. And we disguise it. I haven't showed all the buildings here, just enough to show you what's going on here. But these buildings were kind of disguised where the 2 tracks come out of the area. And this in blue is all viaduct. That's all that viaduct you saw in the first picture. It's going to be over some switching areas down below. But what this does is it brings us over here to Monroe Yard. And you can see there's a runaround track right here and some classification tracks. Now, the idea I had was that I would sit here at the staging area and I would build up to 3 consists right here of just cuts of cars with a caboose on the end. And given a sucker, I kind of would have to kind of wave a flag around and ask for people to come over and operate. But if I were to get some people to come over and operate, I would hand them instructions. And they would start with a locomotive over here into the engine service track. And from here, they would back down the viaduct and into the staging area, pick up their train, along with the paperwork around it, probably a switch list. And they would take that then back across the viaduct and into Monroe Yard. Everybody switched to Monroe Yard. They'd run around the train here at this runaround thing, and they'd sort their cars out. There might be some cars going to this produce warehouse here, number 6. There might be a coal delivery. This little trestle I would cut out, little cutout area here where the trestle could sit and coal piles below it. They'd sort it all out. There may be some off spots sitting here in Monroe Yard. There may be some things that they've got to store here in Monroe Yard, but they wind up with a train that was about 6 cars long. Get the locomotive on the what would be the bottom of the layout, the lower end of it, and then push the whole train back down this line right here and go down what I call the slide. This line drops about 2.5 to 2%. I think 2.1 is what I calculated. And it goes down to the next level. The next level looks like this. Here's the slide right here. You come down here and you come into the freight house. There's the Delaware Avenue freight house and team tracks. There's 3 team tracks in here, plus a big freight house. I thought that'd be kind of an interesting switching operation. You'd have to kind of back up here and run around your train down here in what I call the subway, this double track switching lead. Begin to work these tracks down in here, work the industries. These like industries 3 and 4, that would be a steel bolt manufacturing company. So the steel would come in the outside on track 3, and you'd have finished product coming out of track 4. This is the Wonder Bread area, mostly inbound flour and meal. Outbound would be probably carried by trucks. Industry number 5 down here is a cardboard box factory. Again, box cars going in and out. So this is kind of interesting. You get some operation here. And when you're done switching this area, you go down here through the viaduct here, down this subway area, and over here to 17th Street Yard. Now, in this situation, the operator would have to walk around the end of the peninsula, come over here. Again, giving them a feeling of going somewhere. And now 17th Street Yard is pretty simple. There's a couple runarounds in here, and 7 is another freight house. Oftentimes large cities like Philadelphia and other areas would have multiple freight houses, even for the same railroad. I think Pittsburgh had about 5 for the Pennsylvania Railroad. 17th Street also has a little public delivery track and some other industries in here. This is a steel fabricator, so you get stuff in by gondola underneath the overhead crane. And pretty simple operation, but there are half a dozen spurs in this area to kind of keep things interesting. And when you're done with this area, then you head down toward Water Street, which is off this arrow here. That's this last area. I've left 17th Street in here. And by the way, I had a letter from an individual that considered building this. He was very interested in having me add a car float. He said, where would you put it? And I said, well, I put it down here at the 17th Street Yard. And so it fits right in with a little 6-inch bump out. That's not too bad. It went in place of that public delivery track. Now, let's talk about Water Street down here. This is an interesting area. This would all be a lot of track work in the street. This track right here would run along next to the street, and that would drop into the street right here. And this line actually runs down the center of the street underneath the viaduct. Remember, the viaduct's on top of this part here. Several industries, well, plus some abandoned spurs. This spur would be modeled as abandoned, and so would this spur. I like to build crossings, so I would have no problem with building some very sharp curved crossings here, but those could be omitted if someone didn't want to build those, and just the old ties could be shown. This spur is also abandoned, but I would make it functional. When you pull in a car out of the scrapyard right here, you might want a place to set it over. So you push an empty back in here. But there's 2 or 3 interesting industries. There's a produce and meat place here. Industry number 10 is a cotton wholesaler. Remember a lot of those in Chicago, and I imagine there's a few in the Philadelphia area. Industry 11 is a shirt factory, very common. And industry 13 would be a furniture builder of some sort. Perhaps. Now, again, I'm modeling back before World War II, so my industries reflect that kind of a perspective. But you can see there's a nice long runaround track here. In fact, if I were switching this, I'd pull down on this track, which would be outside to the front edge of the viaduct, and use the back track down through the viaduct to make my runaround moves. But when you're done switching here, then you work your way back up. Here's the whole plan altogether. The interesting thing about this plan is that if you take a shifter, so you start here on the engine service track, go all the way down to the Madison Avenue yard, back to Monroe, back down to Delaware, back to 17th Street Yard, and then on down to Water Street and back, you will have run about 2.5 scale miles on this relatively small switching layout. I thought it'd be a lot of fun to build this. And as a matter of fact, I know of at least one person actually is. So I thought it's kind of fun to describe. Certainly a challenge to build if you're not experienced with building varying track heights and bench work and some of these custom-made pieces of track. Like for instance, the crossings here would take some custom work, and some of the work down in here with the curved switches in the street would be a challenge as well. Anyway, I was also asked by letters from people, could this be incorporated into a continuous run layout? By the way, here's a nice set of team tracks. Refrigerator cars, when they arrived at a city, never went to freight houses. They always went to team tracks. That's something most people don't know. I didn't know it until I was yelled at by a railroader who has since passed on, but he corrected my behavior rather rapidly. I got rid of all the waybills that put refrigerator cars into freight houses. They didn't do it. They always came out to team tracks. So just interesting tidbit. So if I took the Monroe Avenue runaround arrival departure tracks and extended them, you could indeed put a swing bridge in here because your operators still have to get back and forth here. And at the other end here at Module A, if I extended those 2 tracks at the top end of my staging yard, you could indeed make a nice double track runaround with 30-inch radius, minimum radius curves. I thought that worked out kind of nice. Put a workbench right here where your staging areas are. A's staging areas right here. And I will show you what modules D and E look like in just a moment. But this would be a great spot for a workbench. You put a crew lounge in this area. Most basements are about, well, houses are often 24 foot wide because they use 12-inch I'm sorry, 12-inch, good, 12-foot joists. So oftentimes most houses will be have an interior dimension in their basement of about 22 to 23 feet. So this is set up to fit within that very easily, and maybe take up maybe 25 feet if you can't get all the way out to here of space. Certainly this is only 4 foot, and this is 12 foot, so that's 16 foot of layout. But you need some space over here to walk around it, that sort of thing. Now, what did D&E look like? Well, I got imaginative. Here's the old Module A with a staging yard in it and the Delaware Avenue Freight House. And I decided I would bring in the Reading. Now, this could be the B&O too, but I decided I'd get the Reading involved. And here's a little Reading staging area. And they would operate a little bit of this work. They'd have the Sinclair Oil activities. Now, I operate on Chuck Hitchcock's layout. And one of the fun things that he had, I switched out his Sinclair Oil refinery. And he had 4 tracks that would hold 3 cars each. Well, that looks simple. But then he had another 3 cars sitting at the outside spot of the fenced area for his activities. So when you showed up with your 12 cars of oil, or empty cars, actually, your loading cars, take them out. The first thing you did was you had to push the off spots into the loading docks, but you couldn't do that until you pulled the loads. So this got to be quite a complicated switching operation. I thought I would duplicate that. I enjoyed that quite a bit. And of course, in this area, you also had Mack Truck being built in Philadelphia. That's the major industry across the Commerce Street area here. And I also engineered sort of a Y in here just for fun, and I picked up a couple other industries in the area. American Engineering and Fluid Motors had a spur off the Pensy. J.G. Thompson, I'm not sure what they made, but they had a spur. And Gerard Iron and Metal, I envision as being sort of a scrapyard. It's kind of an interesting thing to put low industries in front of higher industries. This way you could reach over a fenced scrapyard, you reach over it pretty easy instead of having a large building in front of you. So I kind of look to move my scrapyard in the front of anything larger switching it back in here. And that's also true of the Sinclair Oil. This would all be just the car height occupied in here, and no large structures in here. So you can see the Mack Truck switching without your view obstructed. So that's the approach I took. I kind of made it interesting. I think it's something I would build if I had a chance to. So that's the layout design for today. Any questions on that? I can't see chat room, so you guys might have to help me out here.
Bill, it's not, this is Greg. It's not a question, but one of the things I was really intrigued when you were first showing those photographs is some of the brick that was in the streets. It would be going one way parallel with the brick, with the tracks, and then all of a sudden it would be crossways with the tracks.
Yeah. Now here it looks like it's a mixture where they're trying to catch up with the crossover.
Yeah, I think it was a photo a couple before this where it was actually showing.
This
yeah,
right here.
Look at that, how it's going longitudinally and then crossways. And, first of all, you just wonder, well, what was the reason? Why did they do it that way? And then you think, well, how would I model that? Because,
Sure.
I'll tell you why. So 75 years later, when people drive over that, they wonder what the hell these people were thinking. I've driven in that area of Philly. In fact, if you back it up a couple of slides, there's one that's I think it's a couple more back. Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah.
If this is where I think it is, Tony Luke's sub shop is on the left, basically right where that flag is.
That's pretty cool. This is a great shot, by the way, from just modeling. I'm not sure what this car is, but it looks like an early container car. And look at this 1.5 box car here, or 2-door box car. This is a very interesting concept going across here if you're a freight car modeler.
When I first saw this picture, I thought those were transformers on that car, but you could be right.
Oh, it could be. That could be. I'm not really sure.
Oh.
I just pulled this off. This is probably from a Google of Delaware Avenue or Philadelphia railroads or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Bill, what kind of locomotives would you use on a layout like this?
Well, I believe
using this
S1s, maybe EMD S one of those NW1s, something like that. But I would have to stay with this little fellow right here.
Ah,
I would buy about 3 of these Sunsets. I would tune them up, give them all wheel pickup, and turn them loose. These were the engines in steam days that worked this area. That's really what they were designed for. They were very heavy 040s, very large boiler, very heavy engines, but they could twist around these curves without much of a problem.
very good.
Yeah. Now,
Bill, thank you so very much. I really do appreciate it. That was fantastic.
you're welcome. Thank you so much yourself.
Well,
I'm
we're
glad I had a chance to talk about it.
Right?
What's that?
You say I should wear this layout's an HO, right?
Yes, I should have said that. I make
Lifelike,
terrible assumptions there.
Lifelike used to make one of them that were pretty good. I got several of them myself, and they run pretty good actually. I don't know if Lifelike still makes them, but you could probably find them out on out on eBay.
They made a nice 060. That's probably what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, a USRA style, which was a Penske B28. Penske had a lot of them, but yeah, they'd be a nice engine to use for this too. And they ran very well, if I remember right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that'd be a great locomotive for something like that.
Yes, it'd be a lot of fun to do this. You could have actually 2 or 3 crews out on this railroad at the same time because there are enough switching areas and switching leads. You could send a crew out. Let me just for a moment advance to the layout plan. Excuse me for just a moment here. I meant to mention that.
Yeah, Paul Woods in the chat says there are definitely containers on that one slide.
Okay. Yeah, if I were to look at this thing, you could have a crew working at Delaware Avenue at the same time a crew's working down here at Water Street, and have a 3rd crew up here working Monroe Yard. You could have 2 or 3 people trying to coordinate across this railroad. There are enough switching leads, there are enough jobs to do in a certain area. You could work them around. One job could be dedicated to Delaware Avenue. Another job could work the way all the way down to Water Street first and start working there and then work the way around. You do a lot of different kinds of things with this. So,
Bill, how long an operating session would be on this layout?
I would guess it would take about anywhere between, depending upon how complicated you made the switch list. I'm guessing probably in the half an hour for each job, maybe an hour, depending upon how fast people ran. I generally find that if you have 8 spurs to switch, it takes about 2 hours. Now you got 6 cars, so you can't work 8 spurs. You're really limited by this area at the very top here, where the 2.75 is. That line right there. If I could extend that a little bit, you could work with more than 6 cars. So I'm guessing that probably an hour and a half to an hour for most of the jobs before you come back down here to Madison Avenue and turn your train back in. You're gonna get the next one to go out. But you can keep
something
this continuously. What's
something
that?
I was thinking of to add a little bit of difficulty to the switching. I don't know how often automotive and truck bus traffic would interfere with their movements. You get a parked car in the wrong place or something, but all you would have to do is put a car down on the tracks and say, well, that guy's not coming back for 10 minutes. He might get a ticket, but you can't move until that car's gone.
It would be a good time to indulge in adult beverages, I think,
You could have a whole simulated tow truck come and tow it away. And
oh, I like that. Bring it there. Oh, there we go.
That's I made it into Indiana Northern, but that's the Lifelike version. Like I say, it runs pretty good.
Well, I've never had good luck with those things, but I'm glad you've got good luck.
Yeah. Well, and it's probably like any other locomotive. I mean, I've gotten other locomotives that run terrible and others run great. And I got like 2 IHC locomotives. One pulls really great, and the other one lucky to pulls itself. So
well, automobiles are the same way. Sometimes 2 cars will come down the line, the same one right after the other, and one's a lemon and one is just a real big runner.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Bill, you originally cited that there were 3 railroads in the area that had trackage rights. Would they have trackage rights in this particular layout?
They could, yes. As I understood it, I don't think it was divided off into areas. I think that the city actually leased it to the railroads, and sometimes the Reading would be down through here, sometimes the B&O, sometimes the Pennsy. And what I have not been able to discover is, did they share it at the same time, or were there periods of time during which one railroad had exclusive privileges over the others?
Well, my curiosity would ask, was there an interchange here?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay. And one last point in that vein, you might find a B&O dockside at home here too.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were oftentimes found in Baltimore, in the same kinds of areas where you got really tight trackage and stuff. But yeah, dockside would be good for this.
Yeah, you're also describing a similar area where the Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal used to operate in Brooklyn.
Yes,
in a
that's
couple
a
of
neat
areas.
railroad too. That's another one that fascinates me. So,
Yeah, one thing I know that Troy, New York actually sort of did this. I want to say a similar thing where all the track inside Troy, New York was owned by its own little railroad and all that, but it was operated between New York Central, Delaware Hudson, and Boston and Maine.
yeah, they're interesting arrangements like that. They're great modeling opportunities too.
And I think the way it was set up is that, I could be wrong on this, but I think it was set up where, especially around the train station, I think that was operated by the city's railroad. You know, they controlled all the all the traffic. I could be wrong on that though.
That would that might have been a consortium of railroads owning that, like the Indiana Harbor Belt or the Chicago railroad that went into Union Station. You know, they were all owned by, everybody paid a certain percentage and that sort of thing.
Well, listen, Bill, thanks so very much. Really do
Sure.
appreciate it. That was really great tonight.
Another
So now-
suggestion for a locomotive that might fit very nicely on that layout.
There we
is,
go.
An ancient Sakura 040T modeled on the Baltimore and Ohio that would go around, radiuses like the rim of a sombrero. That's just another opportunity. Thank you.
So now let's turn to Jeff Bunza, who's going to talk about animation and lighting for us. Jeff?
All right, let's see if I can get control here.
You should have it.
Okay. We got a little logistics catch up from last time, which should be pretty short. I ended last time by asking you if these are three red LEDs and each one of them have a guaranteed 20 milliamps through them, how come the brightness is so different? And it is different, by the way, like radically different. This one's barely lit when you actually look at it. And the answer is pretty simple. The one that was barely lit was built in 1996 and the other one was built in 2017. The reason I'm bringing that up is to point out that all of these wonderful formulas that exist on the net to have you calculate what the current limiting resistor to put in series with an LED basically make too many assumptions. And part of the issue is that LED manufacturers have been working very hard over the years to increase the intensity of the light coming out per milliamp. So the efficiency of LEDs is constantly a moving target. And that's why the best way to deal with varying the lightness, the light coming out of an LED is by varying a resistor in series with them, is to have a bunch of them around, ranging from maybe 47 ohms to about 10,000 ohms. Start with the highest one, which will give you the dimmest view for the voltage you're using, and drop it. And then you'll pick one that's pleasing to you, and you can go and use that as the limiting resistor. Much more effective than any other method and is not dependent on the year which you bought the LED. The second thing I wanted to follow up on was the use of these very, very thin wires. And I wasn't trying to torture you with telling you how to solder them on last time, although it probably seemed that way. You can go and buy LEDs from many different sources now, including a company that I like in Germany called Lead Baron, Ledbaron, which sells on eBay. Very reputable, very good service, a wide range of products. In fact, so wide, maybe I contributed to the fact that they seem to sell out quickly, but they do replenish and put new up. Those wires that were coming out of there, I happen to mention, were 38 or 36 gauge, depending on what you buy. Those wires are so thin that they actually are very, very useful for another reason. Originally, I cut them the length depending on where I was going to put them, and then did the normal tinning and soldering. I have abandoned that as a waste of time. And the reason is what I do now is simply wind them up and take a piece of Kapton tape and simply tape the wind up to a surface inside a locomotive or a building. And the reason is that it has almost no depth. You can see from the Kapton tape in the picture that it's actually pretty smooth over the surface. If you paint on it, it'll disappear, and that's going to be a feature later on. This is a very short video, and I want you to pay attention to the LEDs up here, which go lead. I think this is orange, then yellow. The one over here is white, then this is blue. I can't remember what, that one's probably green. So watch really quickly what happens. I'm increasing the voltage to all the LEDs. They're all wired in parallel. Here's the LED getting brighter and brighter. These are coming on, that's coming on. Notice the white hasn't come on yet. The blue hasn't come on yet. Blue comes on, white comes on, and notice how bright the red is, and then I turn them all down before I blow them out. Now, the reason for that is pretty simple. I get a lot of feedback about wiring up LEDs without current limiting resistors and saying, well, I only need one current limiting resistor for any LED I use. Not true. And the reason is that these LEDs turn on with a different voltage across the LED. And what that means is the one that turns on earliest is going to suck more current through it than the one that turns on later, like the white LED. Now, you might have noticed that the blue and white LED turn on about the same time. That's because the way you make a white LED is to take a blue LED and put phosphor all over it. And the phosphor is what actually gives you the color. So you need a different resistor depending on what color you're using. That's just a fact of life. Here are the useful links that you want, including where to get LEDs and different sources. There are many, many more sources for LEDs that are pre-wired now than there were when I first started using them. And you can do a search for pre-wired LED on eBay, and you'll find lots and lots. What you're going to find the difference of with all of these pre-wired LEDs is some of those wires are actually a lot thicker than others. Some of them are not enamel covered. Some of them are plastic covered. Some of them are Teflon covered. And some of them are enamel covered. And the enamel that I talked about that's easy to get off last time is not usually what comes out of China. The ones that Lead Baron sells out of Germany is. This is Barney. Barney is like Fred, if you remember Fred from last time, except, and you drill through his leg and arm and whatever to get the position to put the LED, which you can see over here is going to be at the top of his lantern right there. Except that Barney was the kind of the next stage when I found out that what you can actually do is hide the wires in a different way. Barney is made to fit on, or I should have said, fit on top of a PC tie, which is right here. And the conducting part of the PC tie is underneath because I'm going to use that and chop it up to make contacts that are going to touch each rail with a piece of phosphor bronze. And the best way to get a really thin piece of phosphor bronze is from a coupler spring. You can cut the PC into segments that you want to make contact with, kind of making your own little PC board there. Bend the phosphor bronze contacts around it, and eventually you're going to wind up creating a stand for Barney. Now, Barney is also going to point out something else that's different. This concept of using something called a current regulator. Now, after I told you about using different resistors, you can actually use a current regulator with DCC or with any voltage source that's above 5 volts. And it, depending on which one you buy, you can buy a CL2 over here. And the 2 means it puts out constant 20 milliamps through it, which just happens to be the maximum current that most of the LEDs can handle. You can also get a CL25 for 20 milliamps. And it's a neat device because we can use it to substitute for the resistor to light any LED, whether you've got a positive voltage to the resistor to the LED, or you're putting it across DCC rail. This rectifier is suggested over here. It turns out it's not required. It actually violates the technical spec for the CL2 and the LED if you don't use it, but I found out that the technical spec is an exaggeration, being very conservative, and in fact, all of these examples will work without that diode there. So if I want to wire it up, I just wire it from a positive voltage source or DCC through the CL2 to the LED. Notice no resistor here. This will guarantee always 20 milliamps is going to go through here as long as the positive voltage relative to the negative side is above 5 volts. Now, when I want to dim an LED in this method, I add more resistance. I can double it or just simply increase a single resistor. Because this is a current regulator, the way that I dim the LED here is by putting the resistor in parallel with the LED. And what this does is it shares the current going through here. And if I have 2 of exactly the same LEDs, why the same? Because they behave the same. They turn on at the same voltage. It will split the current through the 20 milliamps into 10 and 10. And if I had 3, then it would be 1/3 of 20. If I had 4, it'd be 5 milliamps, and you get the idea. So you can use this in a couple of different ways. Another interesting thing is you can actually double the CL2 in parallel if you wanted 40 milliamps or 50 milliamps. And you wire it all up. Here's the current regulator. Here's the PC tie. Here are the contacts. And notice that Barney slips in between the rails and lights his lantern there. Here's the side view of it with the CL2. So that's another trick. The last trick I wanted to tell you about Barney is if you look, you actually can't really see it very well in this. Behind about here, through here, and over is the wire that comes out and is simply painted over. And that is the other trick with Barney that I learned, that the wire from this thing is so thin, so tiny, you can just paint over it and you'll never find it, or certainly it'll be very difficult to find. So that's another trick using these very, very thin wires. You can also kit bash crossbucks. I was experimenting with how you use lenses with a very small LED. So these LEDs I think are in here are 0402s, but you can see I start with an old Plasticville Crossing. It turns out that most of the base is accurate, but it also turns out that this is kind of hunky and big and the crossbucks look ridiculous. So I substituted a Tichy crossbucks, put it on here instead, got rid of the other ones, painted this black, drilled a hole up here, ran the wires up and painted over them with white enamel paint and then dull coat. And lo and behold, you wind up with something that looks like this. And it looks a lot better than the original. And also, surprising to me, it looks a lot better than a commercial crossbucks that were lit with grain of wheat bulbs here. So you can do some interesting kit bashes. Here's another one, again, with an old standby that I would never put on my railroad, a Plasticville Crossing. And by manipulating it, cutting it down, putting in 2 pieces of strip styrene, making them slightly diagonal, and then putting some decal 8-inch stripes on them, all of a sudden you've got a very, very nice rendition of a pneumatic crossing gate, which is actually pretty accurate to the prototype. When you wire it up with LEDs, the one on the end stays constant and these alternate flash. And that's really all you need to know. Drill a hole through the base, out the bottom, and connect your wiring through the base or to the side. Very, very easy to do and a very interesting project for an evening or two. This basically covers a lot of the LED constructs, lighting, electrical characteristics, to insert LEDs in really interesting places. And the best part in animation using LEDs is getting them to flash. The traditional way would be to use something like a 555 timer in a simple circuit, but it turns out that there are a lot better ways of doing it. And this is the lead-in then to the next segment, where we're going to start talking about using things that terrorize half the modeling community called Arduino controllers, which I guarantee you, you will not have to learn how to program. And I want you to see in the next slide an animation controlling these LEDs that clearly makes them come alive in a different way. And I'll give you a combination. But your charter to answer between now and the next 15-minute segment is going to be, how many different animations are in the next video? And that's it for this time. I hope you found all the animations. We'll talk about why they're different for the next time. And we'll talk about sequencing to put them all together as well. Are there any questions?
I got one for the voltage regulator. When you hook it up to DCC, that's an, well, it's sort of an AC signal. Would that require some kind of capacitor to sort of take up the AC signal?
No. So let me explain why not. First off, it's a current regulator, not a voltage regulator.
Okay.
And the second part is that the DCC signal is actually oscillating up and down a little bit less than 10,000 times a second. Your eye can't follow it that quickly. So that oscillation actually looks like a continuous wave to light the LED. Now, it turns out that it's only picking up the part of it that's on probably the positive end of that. So it's actually picking up a signal that's a little bit less than 5,000 times a second, and your eye still can't follow that.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions?
You can use that, by the way, on DC as well, but it'll only work in one direction. And the voltage across the rails would have to be above 5 volts to light the LED. If you want it continuous with DC, I'd suggest you use a resistor instead. But then as the voltage changes, you'll also find that the intensity of the LED is going to change. That's the difference with using a current regulator. Once it turns on full.
So
Other questions?
So it'd be better to use the AC accessory instead.
If you wanted to, that would work with it. Yeah,
Well,
you could do that. I think that works up to 23 or 25 volts, if I remember right.
If you wanted to use your FRED on DC, you could add a very small rectifier in as well.
Yeah, but then you couldn't put it on a PC tie because I don't know of a small enough rectifier to fit across a PC tie. But yeah, that's the general idea. You got it right. Okay, I want to hear what you guys count up on all the animations on that last video.
Well, we're looking forward to your next time, Jeff. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Next, I'd like to introduce you to Charles Goodrich, who's an MMR number 229, which is an early number. Charles, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really do appreciate it. And I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Charles?
Is Charles not here?
I do not see a Charles.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, with that said, that's all I have for this evening. So we might as well, Ed, get ready to terminate the recording, and then we can talk about whatever anybody else would like to talk about.
Alrighty then.
Hold on a minute. Next Saturday, the 20th, our featured model is Stan Cedarly. I believe Stan will be here for us. Who's going to talk about his decals and his model railroad. We also have Bob Farquhar going to talk about his build-along situation with Blair Line. Martin Brecklett's going to talk about scratch building. Martin is also an MMR, I believe 229. And, or no, I forget, Martin is 300 and something, I forget now. And okay, I'm sorry, Martin. And Greg is going to talk about what's new. So I hope you'll be back with us Saturday. I don't know what happened to Charles. It may be a weather situation with all of the snow around and so forth. I hope that it's not illness. So Charles, best of luck to you, and hopefully you'll join us some other time. So that's it for tonight. I appreciate everybody coming. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Thank you so